Welcome back to 60 Minutes. It is the most devastating nuclear disaster since Chernobyl. When a tsunami triggered the explosion at the Fukushima nuclear plant in 2011, the world feared the worst, and for good reason. Tens of thousands of people were forced to leave their homes. Millions of others now live in fear of serious illness. In the 3 years since then, Japan has shut down 48 nuclear reactors. But incredibly, it's now planning to reopen them. For the local people, it is an extraordinary decision, especially when you see firsthand the reality of this crisis. What you're looking at is a ghost city. One of a number in the 20-kilometre wide no-go zone left in the wake of Japan's Fukushima nuclear catastrophe. This is Namiya City, once home to 21,000 people. Now empty, its businesses abandoned, streets deserted. This city is 15 kilometres from the Fukushima nuclear plant, which means it was right in the firing line when the plant blew up. That day, a huge radioactive plume filled the skies, and the people who lived here had little choice but to flee their homes. Well, today, 3 years on, the radiation levels are still very high. We've been given permission to spend just a few hours here. But what about the locals? Well, it's highly unlikely they'll ever be back.
I think a lot of them, at the beginning, they really hoped that they would be back here in a couple of years, but it's not happening anytime soon.
Do you think... Japanese journalist Chia Masumoto has watched firsthand her country trying to cope with the disaster. Namiya, she says, prospered because it was home to so many nuclear plant workers.
It's very unfortunate because the plant that flourished their lives and that gave their assets now destroyed their lives and their family and their jobs and their town.
Life for the people of Japan changed forever in March 2011. When a massive earthquake generated this devastating tsunami. But there was more to come, when just hours later, an explosion at the damaged Fukushima nuclear plant triggered the meltdown of 3 of its reactors.
It's an endless catastrophe. I can see no point at which they can stop. The radiation pouring into the Pacific and being emitted to the air, really, in a way, for the rest of time.
Dr. Helen Caldecott is a paediatrician and nuclear expert. When you saw what happened at Fukushima, what was your first reaction?
It was a sort of dread, empty feeling in my gut that there was absolutely nothing anyone could do about this and it would go on forever. And as a physician and a paediatrician, I was absolutely horrified. Because I knew what sort of diseases it would produce.
And that's what worries the families of Fukushima. 2-year-old Hiroto wasn't even born when the nuclear plant exploded. But even so, he and his 5-month-old little brother are being scanned for radiation. Hirata Hospital in Fukushima Prefecture has tested 40,000 people for radiation. 100 have so far tested positive, one man recording 30 times the normal level. And are you worried for yourself?
I'm concerned about myself, but more than that, I'm very concerned about my daughter.
For Mum Kaori, it's a confronting moment when she'll learn if her daughter has been affected. This machine converts radiation into light to detect contamination.
それの数年分の1ぐらいの被曝。
Today, the news is good. But because the air and soil, the water and food have all been affected, Little Rin will need to be tested for years to come.
What is this for?
For radiation.
A few kilometres away, housewife Tatiko Noguchi is doing tests of her own.
It's too cold for radiation.
Very dangerous.
And the results aren't as good.
That is still going up. So this tree is a hotspot.
60 kilometres from the nuclear plant that exploded 3 years ago,
It's still going up.
radiation levels on the ground and in the trees are still alarmingly high.
原発が
My life has changed ever since the disaster.
そこから
I've never hung my laundry outside. I buy water and I don't buy vegetables from outside.
は一切外に干さなくなったりだとか。
Tatiko leads a group of volunteer mothers who test everything for radiation. They rode bikes down every street of their town to personally map the levels of contamination. And every day they test food, even dust, vacuumed from family homes. Today's results reveal cesium, a deadly chemical from the nuclear explosion fallout.
Do you feel forgotten 3 years on?
いや、
The Japanese people have not even thought about us anymore. The government is saying decontamination is working and spending billions and billions of yen in this operation. But the problem has not been solved. It's still ongoing.
はい。
So many families have been affected by the nuclear explosion, including 80,000 radiation refugees. Many of them 2 years ago I found living in cardboard boxes in stadiums.
When you look at this, I mean, I do feel like I'm looking through someone's window. People have gone to a lot of effort, haven't they, to try and make a cardboard box home.
Into their home.
They've since moved out, and today many live in temporary housing communities like this. But the conditions are still bleak and still extremely cramped.
お邪魔します。
88-year-old Yaiko used to live in a 6-bedroom home in the countryside.
Yes, I'm saying, coming from a 6-bedroom house to how many rooms here? This is it. This is one room.
Today she fills her time with origami and with no prospect of ever going home.
I have nothing else to do. This is how I feel in time.
Do you fear that you may have to live here for the rest of your life?
息子が千葉にいんの。
I really want to go back to my family home, but I know that I cannot ever go back.
先祖からもらった腕だから。
You need special authorization to enter the exclusion zone. We've been given a short time to see the places so many people were forced to leave behind, including Yaiko's now deserted home.
Well, this is where Yaiko lives. It's a 2-storey house on a farm. It's vastly different to where she is now, of course. But the radiation level is extraordinarily high here. No one can live here, let alone an 88-year-old woman.
Our Geiger counter reads radiation levels 100 times higher than it should be. But out on land, once deemed uninhabitable, workers are carrying out what the Japanese government says is a decontamination program. The earth is being stripped clean, and each one of these black bags, hundreds of them, is packed with radioactive waste. So after you've stripped the trees and washed the roads and removed the topsoil, local communities are left with this: bags and bags of contaminated dirt. But then what? You have to ask, how do you clean up the cleanup.
Well, you can't clean up radiation. Well, what do you do with it? Plastic deteriorates within a few years and they'll all leak and the soil will go back. The radiation stays in the soil for hundreds, if not thousands of years, depending upon the elements. Plutonium lasts for 500,000 years.
So no amount of stripping trees, spraying roads, removing topsoil is going to change
Do
the
anything
situation.
about it at all.
So why are they doing it?
Well, to make people feel better. They don't want to create panic. You can't clean it up.
Thank you for watching this video. I'm Masayuki Ono of the Tokyo Electric Power Company.
Convincing the public that everything is okay is exactly what TEPCO, the nuclear plant's owner, is trying to do.
This is a photo of units 1 to 4 taken from the air.
This company video shows the cleanup taking place inside the Fukushima plant. But the truth is, workers are in a delicate race against time, trying to carefully remove highly radioactive spent fuel.
And you can see an ice wall already formed.
Decommissioning the plant could take decades and cost tens of billions of dollars. Is it fair to say that the nuclear plant at Fukushima is still not under control?
I do not think that is a correct description, that it's not under control.
How can you possibly say, though, that it is under control when there is radioactive waste still going into the ocean?
It is true that we cannot say for certain that there is nothing going out into the ocean.
Teraki Kobayashi is the spokesman for TEPCO.
At TEPCO, we are working to stabilize the plant, and also we are making progress on decommissioning the plant in order to allow the people who have been forced to evacuate to return to their homes as soon as possible.
Well, it's been 3 years now. How many years are we talking about? If you're saying they may be able to go home one day, are we talking 5, 10, 20 years?
So it's difficult to give a specific timeline for all of the people being able to return back home, and I'm very sorry for that.
The message that everything is fine is one that the Japanese government is desperate for the world to believe, especially as it will host the summer 2020 Olympics here in Tokyo. But Fukushima is 200 kilometres up the road and still leaking contaminated water. Critics argue that for a government that is still convincing its own people of their safety, will have a tough time guaranteeing the health and well-being of the world's elite athletes and the thousands who come to watch them. You believe, obviously, that appointment of Tokyo taking the Olympics should be cancelled?
Absolutely. It took my breath away when they did that. I've rarely heard of anything so stupid and medically dangerous, potentially.
So what would you be saying to athletes who maybe...
I don't go there.
Can I say that you seem more worried than the rest of the world?
Well, that's because I know more.
In Fukushima City, residents have little choice but to continue with their daily lives. And even though this is outside the exclusion zone, radiation monitors are everywhere, along the streets and in schoolyards. It is a constant reminder of an ongoing disaster. For mothers like Tatika Noguchi, it's been 3 years of living hell with no end in sight. She has just one message for the world.
We ask you not to forget about us.
When Japan was rocked by